we are people of different ethnic things, different mixtures and so on. And remember now that the Caribbean remains arguably the most vital living laboratory of much of what is the history of the Americas, where people of different cultures had their encounters of different kinds over a long period of time. And so people are accustomed to being other things as well as themselves. And I like to put it in this context because you and I, all of us could be described in a particular way, despite the way we look, that we are part African, part European, part Asian, part Native American, but totally Caribbean. Lots of people can't deal with that kind of chaos in order or order in chaos, but we can. We operate on 3-4 levels at the same time, and that's the nature of the region and should be the nature of the Americas. The notion that a place like this country, for example, has decided to go one linear route in terms of its identity. And the tendency is the homogeneity, that principle is fighting dead on with the reality of heterogeneity. And, the people in power expect blacks to be white. Let me put it that way in blunt terms, while the whites don't expect themselves to be black.
Yes.
And I've often said to my North American white friends that until you get around to the notion that you're as negrified as I am Europeanized, I'm speaking to you in English, I'm not speaking to you in Yoruba or in Swahili or in whatever other language or in Twi. Until they can come to terms with the notion that they're as negrified as people like us are Europeanized, there will be no peace in the land, really. And I think in the Caribbean, I've often put it another way, thanks to M.G. Smith and his great work on cultural pluralism, that in the Caribbean, we have come to understand what it is to live together rather than side by side. You see, multiculturalism is a nice sort of way out because you can be in your small corner and I in mine. We're still multi. In the Caribbean, it's not that. It's an interculturalism. And the intercontextuality of existence was forced upon us by the reality of colonialism and slavery, but we are constantly creolizing everything. And all peoples of the Americas are Creoles, all of us, including the Native Americans, who, as a result of their exposure to others of us who came in later, have themselves changed.
You mentioned cultural pluralism, and Guyana, and to a less extent Trinidad, are going through a period of serious self-examinations and difficulty. Talk a little bit about that and its significance and what the future holds in your view.
Well, you see, in fairness, I mean, what we have inherited is, the Indians really are late in the game of exactly what the blacks had to fight against, their marginalization. And remember, the Indians were brought in after emancipation, and they took the place of the Africans in that kind of society which is so stratified. Everybody wants to look down on somebody else. Well, time has caught up with us in that part of the Caribbean, because in majoritarian rule, so-called democratic elections and whatever, the majority count. And the Indians are, in Trinidad, a major minority, and in Ghana, an undoubted majority. So the question of power, because this is very important, power having been transferred to these outposts, the question as to who should control that power, how it should be distributed, is a factor of post-independence. And this is what you are seeing. Now they will have to work things out. And again, we are trying, but there's enough in terms of this creolization thing. For example, the Indian, no more than the person of African ancestry can, he must be a Creole. It must be a way. The Indian has to become West Indian in the way that the African became West Indian and the European became West Indian. And it will take time. as well. When people have flexed their muscles enough, do enough shadow boxing, get a little tired, nobody quite wins, it will work itself. But this is all part and parcel of the thing of growing up, shaping a new society. And we're going to have a whooping cough and our chicken pox and all what have you, all of that, as long as the immune system doesn't become totally shattered. I think we will work through. Optimistic, yes, I have to be optimistic because we are all we have. And that old injunction of Marcus Garvey, who in 1937 said it to West Indians he met in Menelik Hall in Nova Scotia. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Only you yourselves can do it. The interesting thing that Bob Marley is now credited with it. Of course, Bob Marley read Marcus Garvey, and he transformed that into a powerful couplet. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. And you see, it is we who have to do it. And that's what we are doing. And I think we should be given some space in which to do it. I go back to what I said, that as soon as people in Washington hear that a couple of guns are fired in West Kingston, a travel advisory comes out advising their citizens not to go, which of course had tremendous impact on our tourist industry. The truth of the matter is that this place is a gun place, and it won its independence by the gun, which we didn't, know. And I think things need to be put into perspective. And it is true that, of course, the media are largely responsible for much of this. As a youngster, I was very courageous. I would see me on the subway in New York anytime, going to Long Island to Brooklyn. Well, nowadays you will never find me on that. So people are affected by this, I understand. I prefer to stay in Manhattan. And, Washington itself, I'm reliably informed, is not by any means a nonviolent spot. Right. And some people escape it and get off to Virginia and Maryland, not knowing what is going on back in the heart of the city. So, in fact, we need to get all these things into perspective.
Professor Nettleford, I want to thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you very much.
Like I said at the beginning of the program, we've been trying to catch hold of you for a very long time, and we finally got you today, and we're very glad.
Well, I've been finally hijacked. Thank you so much.
Well, it's been my pleasure to speak to Professor Nettleford. It's a lifelong dream, I dare say. And I'm very glad that I've been able to share it with you. So until the next time, this is David Hines, thanking you for tuning in to yet another edition of Carib Nation. And remember, as always, our motto here is one people, one culture, one Caribbean, one nation. And as we say, rally round the West Indies.
Well, good evening to you. Welcome to this evening's edition of Politics 101. We had a false start, but we are here sharing with you there another part of my life and part of my service. A program called Carib Nation, originating out of Washington, D.C. I was a founder member of that program. It's called Carib Nation. It's been on air since 1995. So it's 28 years old. It's the longest serving Caribbean program in the United States of America, Caribbean TV program. The people in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, Baltimore, I think it's shown in Baltimore, are accustomed to it. I don't get to do as much with it as I should because I am so busy doing other things. But that's Carb Nation, and that interview I did there with Professor Rex Nettleford, Jamaican and Caribbean cultural icon, and sharing with you some ideas on culture, on Guyanese politics. I also do a radio program in Baltimore on the second Saturday of each month. It's called the Caribbean Political Hour with Dr. David Hines on WEEA. Desiree, and the others in Washington, D.C. would know of that program. I've been doing that program now for what? I started in 1997. So that's what? 1997, 26 years. So I've been on TV in Washington, D.C. now for 28 years and 26 years on radio. I still do that radio program religiously every second Saturday of the month between 2 and 3 o'clock. The Caribbean Political Hour with Dr. David Hines is hosted by a sister, Claudette Lindsay, and I analyze the politics of the Caribbean for the preceding month. We go through the entire Caribbean. So just sharing with you some other aspects of my life and contribution to some of our detractors think that I mean, we just exist in this small place, but we do our work. We contribute to our Guyana, our Caribbean, to the Black world in the United States of America. And we've been doing that for all of our lives. You know, I got into this thing when I was 14 to 15 years old, still in short pants, and I've been going at it all the time. So we're not Johnny come lately, you know. We know what we're about, and we are as diverse as they come. We understand our own Guyana, we also understand our wider Caribbean. I'm a regular contributor to programs in Antigua. The Guyanese in Antigua are quite familiar with me. I appear on radio there very, very, very often. At least once every 2 weeks I'm on radio there talking not so much about Guyana, but about our Caribbean. Sometimes I'm asked to comment on things Guyanese whenever things are happening here. So just sharing with our sisters and brothers in Guyana who may not be au fait with the other aspects of our work, what we are doing there. Somebody's watching from Cleveland, Ohio. And, I have family there, my uncle, and I have uncles there, and an uncle there and his family. And it's a place that I visit relatively often. Welcome, Cleveland, Ohio. And I know quite a few Bostonians are there, the Scots and so forth. It's good to welcome you all to Politics 101 and to share what we do. And I want to say so much thanks, my heartfelt thanks to the people of Mahaica. I went there on Saturday. I think I see my brother Orrin Newton is on the live, and Orrin Newton and quite a few of us went up there because former assistant commissioner of police, Marlon Chapman. A lot of you will know him. He is now retired, but he started out as a little police boy in Buxton. So we consider him a Buxton. His wife passed away, and she was buried on Saturday. So, of course, we went up there to lend support to our brother. And my goodness me, so the people of Mahaica, generally recognize my presence. And it's you know, I have to say, you know, the reception was overwhelming, and I want to say thanks. I want to say thanks to the people of Maika. You know, one doesn't get out as much as one should into these communities, but I want to say thanks to the lady who the lady who got up, because when I got there with a couple of my friends, the church was packed and there was no seating, and the lady who got up and offered me a chair, and I tried to plead with her that no, you know, I can't, and she instructed me to take the chair. She said she's going to get up and go outside and let me sit, and the other ladies around insisted that that I took the chair and that I sit, and they all thanked me, of course, for what we do here in the evenings. And I was almost moved to tears because, you know, to get that kind of recognition from regular people, Guyanese, it gives you hope. Um, the thanks. The other lady who, I think her name is Jackie, who said to me, Dr. Hines, you're my inspiration, and that I am glad to meet you in person. And all the others who spoke with me and shook my hands, including some Indian Guyanese. I went there, of course, I said to mourn with my friend. But, you know, politics is all over us. And I just want to say heartfelt thanks to the people of Mahika. I know Mahika is a very large place and different parts of Mahika, but the young lady, she was only in her 50s, I think, that died, was well known. And so people came out in their numbers. There were people there, you know, from West Babis. I had the pleasure of um, meeting for the first time Member of Parliament Jennifer Wade. She was a former PNC Member of Parliament, and some other people from West Babis who were there. But the lesson here for people like myself is we do what we have to do, but we have absolutely no idea of how much we are touching people, how much we are touching people. And it touches us, touches me when I get to go out into the countryside, into the inner and further reaches of our country, and to rub shoulders with the salt of the earth, the salt of the earth. Thank you, Mahika. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I felt honored, and I didn't get the name of the young lady who insisted that I took her chair. You know, they said that, you know, men should give up their seat to women and old people and children. And it was the other way around. She looked younger than me, and she would have none of it. I had to take that chair. And these are memories one carries along in life. It is not meeting the queens and the big shots and the big politicians and so on that matter. Those ladies are queens, African queens, And I want to thank the East Indians who were there and who insisted on having a word with me and to say, keep up the good work. You know, because of our ethnic politics, sometimes we feel that, you know, Indians have a particular attitude to those of us who dare to say something about our blackness and so on. But there is another reaction, and you can only find that out when you move around. So thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the people of Mahaica. The people of Mahaica. Good evening to all of us. Good evening to all of us. We are winding down to Emancipation. Next weekend, we are going to be fully in swing. And as I said, we are doing an Emancipation fundraiser here on Politics 101, and we are donating that proceeds to the Emancipation observances in Boston. I have quite a few of you to thank, and I will do so before the end of the program, but definitely tomorrow. Most of you, all of you, do not want your names to be mentioned, but I want to say thank you for your contributions, and I want to urge others of us who have not yet made our contribution to please do so, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Professor Nettleford said there, and remind us, those are the words of Marcus Garvey in 1937 in Menelik Hall, addressing West Indians who he met there. And he said to them, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but yourself can free your mind. Have no fear for atomic energy, for none of them can stop that time. And Bob Marley took those words, the words of Marcus Messiah Garvey, and turned it into what Professor Nettleford called that beautiful couplet, emancipate yourself from mental slavery, redemption songs. Redemption songs. So we learn here tonight, those words are the words of Marcus Messiah Garvey. The song War, sung again by Brother Bob, are the words of Haile Selassie, that Brother Bob again took the words of Selassie and turned it into a song. War. What I call a song that defines racism. But back to the redemption song. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Marcus Messiah Garvey. All of 20th century Black culture and politics has to be traced back to Marcus Messiah Garvey. There have been so many giants in the Black experience of the 20th century. Many of them from the Caribbean, some of them from our Guyana. But Marcus Garvey was bold enough in the early part of the 20th century to say to Black people, up you mighty race, up you mighty race. Very important. Karl Marx in 1848 said to workers of the world, you have nothing to lose but your chains. And those words have been immortalized in world history. And our Marcus Garvey, Jamaican by birth, Caribbean by birth, went to America and led the greatest mass movement until Dr. Martin Luther King's civil rights movement. And Marcus Garvey said, "Up, you mighty race." Not "Up, you superior race." Oh no. Oh no, he's not going to be like our brother Ravidev and his comrades. But he said, "Up, you mighty race." At the time when the race was segregated and treated as second-class citizen, third-class citizen in the United States, colonized in the Caribbean and in Africa, marginalized in Latin America. And Marcus Garvey was bold enough to say, "Up, you mighty race." And all of us who followed we have a part of Marcus Garvey in us. Black self-love. Garvey taught us to love ourselves first. And then that love for ourselves will translate to love for others. Marcus Garvey taught us self-reliance. We must rely on ourselves as an African people. And towards that end, he started something called the Black Star Line, a shipping company that introduced trade between Black America and Black Africa and Black Caribbean, the Black Star Line. His organization, the United Improvement Negro Association, UNIA, opened businesses in the United States, laundromats. The National Factories Act introduced Africans to business in the United States of America. He had a newspaper called the Negro World. He opened a newspaper. And many of the artists in the Negro Renaissance in the United States of America, all the great artists, a lot of them had their beginnings in the Negro World. In those days, the two big publications were the Negro World, Garvey's Negro World, and the NAACP's Crisis, which was edited by W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a contemporary of Marcus Garvey. And then there was the Black Church that Garvey started. Bishop Maguire, the African Orthodox Church. Here was a man that introduced us to this broad praxis: politics, economics, religion, art. And he said to us, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery." Bob Marley in another song would say, "No chains around my feet, but still I'm not free." That the chains have gone, but the chains around our minds have to be removed. So God created man in his own image, said Brother Marcus Garvey. And when I look in the mirror, I see a black man, so God must be black. Garvey wrote a play, and he himself acted in the play. And in the play, he predicted, one of the characters predicted, that a black king shall arise, African king. In those days, the only free African countries were Haiti and Ethiopia. And of course, we know in 1935, the Italians invaded Ethiopia. And so in 1930, when Ethiopia coronated a young emperor, Rastafari, a group of Jamaicans saw that as a fulfillment of Garvey's prophecy. And thus was born what we call today the Rastafari movement, with Marcus Garvey as the prophet and Selassie as the deity. So Marcus Garvey, in a sense, is the foundation upon which the Rastafari movement that all of us have now taken for granted, it was formed based on a prophecy of Marcus Garvey in that play. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Marcus Garvey provided us as Black people with a blueprint, for our liberation. And so many of the African leaders that followed took something from Garvey. He's the foundation of our Caribbean and diasporan African journey of the 20th century into the 21st century. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Garvey taught us that business is important. You know, they say today that Black people can't do business. They say that in Guyana. And one of my contemporaries, one of my brothers, who came to make his Politics 101 donation to our emancipation fundraising, he said to me, Brother David, it's not that Black people can't do business. Black people can't do drugs business, big drugs business. And he walked me through and explained, oh, business in Guyana. Oh, drugs. Illegal drug dealing and pushing is at the center of big business. I'm not saying all big businessmen, but the way in which the business system in Guyana is infected by drugs. And of course, our Black people are not into the big top of the line on the world thing. Professor Clive Thomas a few years ago talked about the criminalization of the state under the PPP, the way in which the state has wrapped its arms around the illicit drug trade. So it is not that our black people cannot do business. Our black people do business every day. But business, big business, is constructed around the narco trade. And of course, our people are not at the top of the narco trade, so they're considered, they can't do business. And my brother walked me through the economics of the narco trade. It was an education for me. An education. So one of Garvey's things was what we must get into business. And I usually give an address every now and again. The young people, I think, of IPADG, they do a business conference every year. And a couple of times they've invited me to talk to them about the history of blacks in business. Not an area that I am an expert, but and I usually point out to them, always answering that question about black people can't do business. And I usually point out to them that whenever the economy of Guyana found itself at its lowest ebb, it is African Guyanese who have always come forward. What am I talking about? After emancipation in 1838, the political economy is changing from a slave economy to a post-slavery economy. And at the center of that is the buying of real estate by Africans, which we call the village movement, turning lands into civilization, the biggest real estate in the history of Guyana. Pioneering post-emancipation economy. And we know the story after that. When we became independent in 1966, and we're moving from a colonial economy to a post-colonial economy. A post-colonial economy dominated by sugar. Our people are in bauxite. They were in small mining. They were in the civil service. But they also were in the small village economy. I was a small boy, as we would say, a little boy. And I remember our people being involved in poultry farming, being involved in cattle farming, being involved in vegetable and greens farming in our village. It was a thriving village economy in the first decade after independence, contributing towards taking Guyana out of that monoculture. Monoculture means a dependence on one product. Diversifying our economy away from sugar. Africans were part of that. And when in the 1980s, as the world economy closed in on small economies. And Guyana's experiment with a nationalist economy that sought to deal with poverty. And the global economy was unkind. To countries that moved towards self-sufficiency. And if you were a post-colonial society, whether in Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America, or Asia, the logic was that you had to move towards a national self-sufficient economy because sugar was losing its currency on the world market. The Europeans were moving towards other forms of sweeteners, beet and all the other forms of sweeteners. Sugar was no longer king. And our post-colonial leaders and economic thinkers had to find new ways and means of surviving in a harsh world. And that world closed in on us in the 1980s. Our economy could no longer stand up. And who came to the rescue? Primarily Black women, taking their suitcases, going out to the rest of the Caribbean. Traders, mainly Black women, and held the Guyanese economy together. They traded in food, they traded in clothes, everything that Guyana needed. It was Black women mostly. And then they tell us we can't do business. God did not create us as a superior race, so we can't do business. The history is there to show. And people like myself have to use the microphone to tell our younger people somebody told a lie about your people. The traders, Black women mostly, saved Guyana. And it was a major act of omission on the part of our political leaders who did not normalize that trading initiative by our women. That is, moving them from traders to medium size and large size business people. They took the initiative. But our political leaders didn't have the insight to invest in them so that they today would have been able to leave for their children big businesses, medium-sized businesses. It was a serious act of omission. And then they say we can't do business. Whenever Guyana was in trouble, and the so-called big businesses couldn't do it, it was the small people, the traders, who stepped in and helped and held Guyana together. We come to the present. We come to the present. Black people have to get into business. And the ACTA people, not ACTA, the IPADG people are going to be back here on Wednesday to continue our discussion, because you see what they found out as they went through the communities, that our people want to get into business. They have brilliant business plans. Look, some young people come to me and share with me some ideas that they have for business. These are not people who went to school and studied business management and economics and all. These are ordinary people, regular people in their own environment, coming up with ideas. What they need is the system to accommodate their ideas, to translate them from ideas to business. And this present PPP is not accommodating Black people's small business. You can't start a business with $10,000 or $40,000, whatever they give you. That is why my party, the Working People's Alliance, has said, take 10% of the oil takings and give that to ordinary people. We don't say give it just to Black people. We say all households. Professor Clive Thomas calculated that it could be at its peak $5,000 US, which is $1 million. If you put $1 million in the hands of regular people, so many people are going to be able to start small businesses. And then the state has to invest in those businesses, give them the necessary training, give them the necessary access to more capital to expand on those small businesses. We have got to start as an African people to demand that we get into the business sector. We are wage earners. Yes, the wage that we work for, we're able to educate our children and put a roof over our heads. But we don't have surplus money to turn it into businesses. We don't have generational capital to turn into business. And I usually say to young people who come to me, well, Dr. Hines, I want to left my work and get into business. And I usually tell them, stay with your work. You get a little insurance, you get a wage. And if you get a little bit of excess savings, turn that savings into business. Don't leave your work. That's usually my layman's advice. Our people have business ideas. I want to say to us here tonight that let us begin to think seriously. All those overseas groups that send barrels, I'm not saying stop sending your barrel to the village, because God knows they still need the books and the things and so on. But take some of the monies that you raise in the United States and engage in some business enterprise in the villages. Those of you who make money in the United States and you have some money, go home into your village. You don't have to leave the United States nowadays. Join with others and start business initiatives in the villages. You will be providing services to your village. You will be employing people. You will be encouraging other businesses. We have to begin to think seriously. It's okay to train people to use computers and so on, and I'm not against that because computer and those things are the big thing. But a lot of people tell me, I went into Beirut a couple of years ago and a girl showed me on she take me in she house and she showed me on she wall. She had about 10 certificates from them computer courses that they have them do over the years. And she didn't have a job. We have to start training people to manage businesses, to start businesses, not just training, but we have to have access to capital. So when the PPP come around and give you all a couple $1,000, you all said that is, what is it called? Development. That's not development. You all have to start demanding from them real investment in businesses. No, we know that they're not about to do that. We know. I went yesterday, funeral of a young lady from Buxton, the Annandale section. I went to the funeral. Thank you, Pastor, for recognizing me in the audience and so forth. And what the people were showing me, it is in the western part of Annandale. The Africans in Annandale are in the southeastern part of Annandale. And this is on the northwestern part of Annandale. And I didn't really take so much notice. And the people were pointing out to me, they said, Dr. Hines, look at the roads here and look at the roads in Buxton. They were angry. The roads in that part of Annandale. And let me be frank, it's the part where our East Indian brothers and sisters live. Well paved. Nice white signs where the children have to cross. And the Buxtonians saying, Dr. Hines, compare these to our streets. And I'm saying as a political person, perhaps because I'm so accustomed to it, I didn't, but they saw it. And they were so angry. And these are the things that are so non-existent. You can hardly drive on the roads in Buxton. I go to other villages, BV. Melanie, I saw Melanie in the house here tonight before Melanie. Melanie, you go to Melanie, you can't drive. Many times, but it's good for me because I get to walk. I got to park my car on the public road when you're going in to these villages. Our priorities have to change. The role of our political parties have to change. We have to begin to think about economic ventures. Brother came to see me this morning and he was telling me, he said, Dr. Hines, we got to start thinking about the economics of our people. And I want us to carry our heads there. And you don't have to leave your other job, as we say, your day job. Marcus Garvey gave us the blueprint. We can be Christians. I went to church on Sunday, got my blessings. I grew up in the Christian church. I grew up in the Anglican church. I have my own intellectual critique of European Christianity, but as I always say, we in the Caribbean, we in Black America, we have, in many regards, liberated European Christianity. In many regards, we have humanized it. And people complain to me all the time that, we have some of these churches nowadays that they are not mobilizing and radicalizing our people. The church is the foundation. I understand that some of the churches are telling people not to engage in politics, but that's another story. We're going to deal with that on another day. But I'm not an anti-church or an anti-Christian person, because I think that we have made tremendous contribution to Christianity. That is why in the United States they talk about the Black church. The Rastafarians say that we are Black Christians. Bring back Maccabee version. That belongs to the Black man. Give back King James version. That belongs to the white man. Black man, get up, stand up on the foot, and give Black God the glory. Nothing stop you from making your God black when you close your eyes and you envisage God. And you imagine what he looks like. And if you imagine that he looks like a black man, that's your personal God. So I'm not an anti-church, an anti-Christian. I know the Christian church has played a hell of a role and so on. But those sisters who tie their heads and the faithist church, they are Christians too. I know some of us in the mainstream churches call them Obia people and all that kind of thing. All those things we got to tackle in our community and stop that nonsense. They're not Obia people. They're Christian just like you. It is just that they connect their God to Africa in a direct way. So we have that kind of work, but that's a conversation for another day. My conversation tonight is economics and making money. I don't believe in black capitalism. The two don't go together. Because capitalism underdeveloped black people. Capitalism enslaved black people. Capitalism was at the basis of slavery. Capitalism was at the basis of colonialism. As a matter of fact, the rise of European capitalism was on the backs, the unpaid labor of the African. So I'm not into black capitalism. What I'm into is black empowerment, economic empowerment. And I want us to begin to think seriously. Whatever you all are doing for emancipation, have somebody come and talk about black economic development, and not just talk, but begin to put in place an infrastructure to turn our young people into what they call entrepreneurs. We are going to do some of that in Buxton. We have our annual UC Emancipation Symposium. I think it's on it's a Wednesday. The date is, I think it's a Thursday. So it would be Thursday the 10th, or whatever day is the 10th, Wednesday or Thursday. And we're trying to get some of our people in there. Brother Nigel Hughes was there, and he gave the feature address last year at the Line Top. And this year, we are getting him into the symposium to begin to talk, to give us a sense of what the economy looks. Guyana is getting plenty money. And we have to plan. Of course, if we vote a government into power that looks like us, or looks partly like us, or partly look like us, we stand a better chance. But while we are working to remove the PPP and to put a national government that represents the interests of all ethnic groups, we will have to begin to lay the foundations in the Black villages, lay the foundations. We're not going to be able to do it on our own, no matter how we try. We're going to get on our own up to a certain point. No ethnic group, no racial group, including white people, build up economic empires without the state. In the Great America, they took away Indian lands and give it as a lottery to white men, called the Indian Removal Act of the 1830s. Took away the Indian land in the Carolinas and Georgia and so forth, and give it to white men who did not own property. And that's where the American dream comes from. The state intervenes. In Guyana, we know the affirmative action that was given to Chinese and Portuguese in the 1800s, starting in the 1800s. We know of affirmative action given to our Indian brothers and sisters after indentureship was finished, lands in front of the estates or surrounding the estates. Africans, we bought our lands. Some of it have been taken away by the state. No ethnic group in any country, in any part of the world, was able to build economic empires without help from the government and the state. So don't let nobody come and tell you government ain't supposed to help you. That's what we create government for. Government was created for look after the welfare of people. And only Black people are into the stupid that they don't want government help. We have a government in Ghana that helps the devils. The devils have become devils because of the help they get from government. So, sisters and brothers, as we enter the emancipation season, I want you all to begin to think about business, making money, not making money in order to oppress people, but making money so that you can live comfortably, so you can lift your family and your community out of poverty. Poverty is a sin. Poverty is hell. That's what Shadow said. And whatever we do, in whatever way we can help, and I'm speaking directly to our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, I want you all to begin to think about partnering with family and friends at home and starting businesses. Starting businesses. Starting businesses. Let me make my appeal again for Politics 101. Donation drive, Emancipation donation drive. Please give. Please donate. The Cash App sign is there. The PayPal sign is there. Please donate. We're not a begging people. We are proud people. We don't like beg. You all know that. You all know that. So what I'm asking is for us to start developing the culture of pooling resources. Those who can give a big donation, please do. Those who can give, some people give some small donations, and I want to say, so thank you. A few of the men called me on Friday night and said, "I'm drinking one less beer." Brother Yuri put it another way. Brother Yuri said he got to be 6-pack, but he's still making his donation, and so forth. Please donate to our Politics 101 donation drive, Emancipation donation drive, and we are donating to the Buxton Emancipation celebration. I'm going to have the Buxtonians, the chairperson or a member of the 1st of August movement here before the end of the week to talk about some of the activities there. They're having activities all over the place. I get invitation to go places on the 31st. I don't leave Buxton on the 31st. On the 1st, I try to get away and go somewhere. Last year, I think I was in Belgium. I haven't been to the national park now for a few years. I will try to spend part of the day there. And I've made up my mind. I've gotten invitations to several villages. I've made up my mind where I'm going to spend the emancipation this year, but it will be somewhere. But on the 31st, I can't leave. I get a lot of groups, villages do their 31st events, July 31st, the night, ringing in the new year on the August 4th. And I get invitations to go, but I just can't leave Buxton. I've been promising the people of Essequibo, for example, but I've not been able to get up there in an emancipation period. But I'll try on the 1st to go somewhere, 1 or 2 villages. So tomorrow night we continue our discussion. What am I getting on tomorrow night? I think I can't remember, but we're gonna have somebody on tomorrow night. I know the ITPAD people are coming back on Wednesday night, and then Thursday night we have somebody on too. So again, thank those of you who've contributed to our donation. Thank you for those 3 ladies who squeezed me hand yesterday at the funeral and give me the little donation for the 1st of August movement in Buxton. I like how they just squeeze you hand and put the thing in there, and then they give you the eye. And so I love our people. We are grateful. We are very grateful. And as I said, one of my brothers came this morning and made his contribution. He shall remain anonymous for now, and so forth. So please contribute to our Politics 101 donation drive, and it's going to go to very important causes. So thank you. Again, thanks to the people of Micah, if you're listening. Thanks. Thank you, Jackie. That's the one name I remember, the lady who gave me the seat. I didn't ask her name, but you know who you are. And the others were on there. I want to say thank you all so much. I truly appreciate. Emancipate ourselves from mental slavery is the worst kind of slavery, the slavery of the mind. Emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. Slavery is a terrible thing. Physical slavery, mental slavery is worse. Emancipate ourselves. That's our theme for this week. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but yourself can free your mind. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We got to fulfill this book. But it's all I ever have. Redemption songs. Redeeming ourselves. Always redeeming ourselves. Redeeming ourselves through song and dance and worship. Revealing ourselves through our resistance and our protest. redeeming ourselves through our affirmation of our blackness, our Africanness. We are equal to other men and women on this planet, in this country, in our region. We don't want to be superior to anybody. We don't want to oppress anybody. We just don't want anybody to oppress us. We just want our children to walk this country and believe that they're full human beings, that they don't have to wash anybody's feet, only the feet of Christ, the Messiah. We are human beings. I want us, don't stop being Guyanese. Don't stop being people of the world. Don't stop being feminists. Don't stop being Christian, but always be black. And all that blackness means is a recognition that our people came here in chains and we broke those chains. The Lion of Judah shall break every chain and give us the victory. That's what blackness means. We have overcome. We have overcome. We are free people. We have always been free. We didn't need an emancipation to tell us that we are free. What emancipation tells us is that others who didn't think that we were equal and free, emancipation was for them to recognize that we are free and equal. Tomorrow night, we come again to do our work. Tomorrow, we come again, God willing.